Hi, this is Kirby Sommers, and I welcome you to my true crime podcast. It is November 23rd in the wee hours of the morning in New York. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. As you can tell, my voice is a little hoarse because I have not had my morning coffee. However, I hope you can put up with my little bit of hoarse voice this morning. Before I get started, would you be kind enough to do what you always do, which is to like the video, and subscribe, because it appears like this is truly the only way that I am going to be able to keep you informed of what's going on. In addition, of course, to my newsletters, and more information on that below in the description area, and I probably will add some information during the course of this conversation. So I was not planning on doing a podcast today because it's the anniversary of my mother's death, and I was going to just try to have a sort of like a day of reflection to myself, and of course, as usual, catch up with my work, which is very much behind due to all of the disruption from the opposition. And the opposition, frankly, includes people that you feel are okay, who present themselves on, let's say, podcasts or YouTube. Well, that's the same thing, right? Or maybe some people have different channels, or Twitter, where you are all aware now that my regular Kirby Sommers Twitter account disappeared last Saturday. So what I attempted to do, and it only occurred to me yesterday afternoon, was to, oh, you know what? I have my business account, which is Landlord Links. Landlord Links are e-guides for landlords, sort of listing every landlord in the city, divided up into neighborhoods, which I created 20 years ago. It's sort of like a guide for renters to help renters save money. And I opened a Twitter account for that business in 2012. And I thought, and I hadn't used it in a couple of years, and I remembered I had it. And so I kind of tagged a few people because I had still been able to see my old Kirby Sommers account, even though I could not access it. So I copied the URLs of a couple of people who I recognized and who, in fact, had wished me well on my so-called time off, which hasn't happened. And then some people did not believe it was me. Now, it had not occurred to me that there has been so much damage done to me in the form of what I have to call opposition agents by creating fraudulent accounts that were supposed to have been me. Oh, well, this is not work. Oh, well, this is working. Okay, I'm going to just keep going. And if I find out later that this is not working, I will do it again. In any event, let me just continue. So I had forgotten that there were these, I'm going to call them troll or opposition, who had created fake accounts pretending to be me, and that, because I just didn't pay attention to stuff like that. I was just too busy working, because there's just so much to share, and it's only me, and there's only a certain amount of hours on any given day that I just blocked people or I ignored it. And it wasn't uppermost on my mind that some of you would not look that the account is not a new account. It was created in 2012, that if you typed in to a search engine, landlord links, you would be redirected or find my business website. It did not occur to me that you wouldn't do that you would just automatically assume that it was fake. Well, a couple of you reported it as being a fake account, and guess what? That too is now gone. And I know that you did it with good intentions. So no harm, no foul. I am here, and you have my YouTube channel. And until that too is gone, then you'll have my newsletters. But what I do want to discuss, and again, if you haven't liked the video, like it, please. Subscribe to my newsletter, one or the other. The one on Substack, all you have to do is Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine you prefer to use, is put in Substack and my name, and you'll find it. I do occasionally post free newsletters, so they're not all paid. And then, of course, my very private and prized Epstein Project newsletter, now in its 4th year, which is where I really let loose. So I do have to warn you that I cannot say everything on YouTube because we are censored. I don't know who believed. And I have to pause because I find it startling that you guys are so smart. Everyone who follows me who is legit, who's like a legit follower and not a troll and not somebody from the other side and not mainstream media who work for the other side, by the way, and not someone hoping to harm me on behalf of any one of the dozens, if not hundreds of people that I have exposed or tried to expose, that I thought that you guys, the real people, uh, would know that Elon Musk is part of the elite. He didn't get to where he is because of his wanting to have, let's say, no censorship. Come on, he's part of the elite. So is Donald Trump. They're just like Ghislaine Maxwell, and they're just like Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Elon Musk may not have an ongoing child trafficking ring, but that does not make him not part of the elite. And so whoever thought, oh, hooray, hooray, we have Twitter, and Elon Musk just paid $44 billion for a company that's not worth more than 5 or 6 billion. And that's with a B, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, because I can't imagine it's with an M. I believe he paid $44 billion for a company that's not worth $6 billion. You do the math. I'm not going to say what the word is, but you tell me why he did that. And that was his second attempt because he backed out the first time and then he did it again. So on the same day that Donald Trump is, quote, reinstated, and Donald Trump is a very good friend of my abuser, the Rickleses. In fact, without the Rickleses' help, Trump could not have built Trump Tower because Meshulam Rickless owned, with Aristotle Onassis, owned the 2 pieces of property that Donald Trump needed to build that. And that's why then they created Olympic Towers, which is where then Onassis and Rickless ended up doing you get this floor, I get this floor, you get this floor, I get this floor. And then Adnan Khashoggi, another member of the same group, moved into that building, doing all kinds of ridiculous things to his apartment. It was just, he put this pool. I don't know why Adnan Khashoggi didn't understand that if you have a pool inside an apartment, you're going to have mold. And so he created a complete hot mess. In any event, that is the only reason that Donald Trump has the property that he has on 57th Street that everybody talks about, that's full of Russians, by the way, and full of mobsters and full of a lot of money laundering. All right. And let's remember, Donald Trump spent a good deal of time being friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was about to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. When he pardoned everyone else and other people that are connected to this ring that I've written about. So again, I'm going to caution you. I'm not going to say every single thing on this platform. So for every single thing, I do explain every single thing in my newsletters because I am safer there. It's just between me and you. It's not on a public forum. And I'm pausing here because although I do try to stay cool, calm, and collected at all times, it is frustrating. So I want to just say that this is not the first time I am censored. I have been censored since I got online, which was in 1997. One of the first, and I will leave a link here for you guys to look at a press release I issued in, I think, 7 years ago in 2015, just as the presidential election was about to take off. And I'll try to find another link where I describe the censorship issues that I have had throughout the course of 30 plus years. So LinkedIn, for example, launched on May 5th, 2003. When I realized that there was a LinkedIn where you could put in your information and you would have at least some kind of an online presence, because everything about me that I had met, because I had a website that was taken away, that just disappeared. And I was always concerned that if I disappeared from uh, being able to be seen on any online platform, since there had already been attempts on my life. Many of you know about this. Some of you may have just heard about this for the first time. However, my life has, I was held as a hostage in a kidnap situation in my apartment by a trained military assassin who had infiltrated my life. I managed to escape after 5 days. I was shot at on West End Avenue in New York City as I was walking down the street. The bullet grazed my leg, my calf, and other things have happened. So I wanted to have an online platform. I wanted to be able for people to see that I was alive, because I thought if I don't have an online presence, that it would be easy to then just really try harder to have me killed. And I didn't want that to happen. So that what I did was I created this LinkedIn account. And before I knew it, it had been taken over. It had been taken over by something called Kirby's Trucking in Texas. Now, back in the 2000s, you could still call. They didn't have all of this difficult stuff about getting in touch with the people who run the company. And I contacted LinkedIn and I said, hey, because it was done through my email address, I used my email address. And I said, hey, this is my page and I can't log into my page anymore. It says Kirby Trucking in Texas, by the way. And by the way, I just want you to know that the CIA and Mossad, they have little front companies. They use truckers to transport drugs and to transport uh, people, trafficked persons. And so that there was this quote, Kirby's Trucking, and it exists, and it's in Texas. And suddenly my account belonged to Kirby's Trucking. And as this back and forth with somebody at LinkedIn at the time, and that person said that that's very unusual because the transfer to this other person, Kirby's Trucking, was done through your email account. Oh, okay, good. So then I discovered in 2003 or 2004, whenever that happened, that somebody had in fact hacked my private email account. And then she said, but start another one. And I did. I don't change anything in there. It has that I was the Tenants Association president. And there's been so much pushback on every level. In any event, my point is that my Twitter account disappearing, and that's just the most recent in a very long line of an attempt to get me to disappear from the internet. However, now many of you have been aware of the never-ending series of attacks on me. I want to say that I had taken some notes. Some of you may be familiar with Kay Pollard Griggs, who is the former wife of a Marine Corps colonel named George Griggs. And she learned that her husband was an intelligence asset and a trained assassin. She sat down with a pastor. The name of the pastor, I have it here, was Rick Strawcutter of Michigan. They sat down in 1998. He had a small radio station. And by the way, the radio station that he had at the time, it was removed. It's gone. The FCC decided in 2001 that his radio station, which was called Radio Free Lenawee, could not be on air, so they removed it. It's my understanding that he is now running for he's now running for, I wrote it down here, hold on a second. He's now running for some kind of political thing, and yeah, he's running for U.S. Congress. So and he's described as a Christian libertarian, and he's running on the U.S. taxpayers' party ticket. I don't know. Does that mean he's a good guy, that he's still a bad guy? I don't know. You never know who's who. Was Kay Pollard talking to a friend or a foe? That's something somebody like myself will never know. But what I do remember about when Kay began to talk was that she mentioned the Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas as being sort of as a safe house for Mossad, CIA, and the intelligence agencies of the armed forces. And by the way, she referred to the armed forces, her husband being a part of it, as being, quote, a front for intelligence service and, bad stuff. Like, I'm not going to say what, but I think some of you know. And she also called it a mind control, so that everyone is mind controlled. Oh, and the other thing that she said is that in the military, it's the all boys club, and that once you're in the military, that someone is going to do something to you that you would not otherwise do, as sort of an initiation rite that makes you part of this all boys club. And the only thing that I can sort of compare it to, so that you can have an understanding of what I'm trying to describe, is the initiation rite for, let's say, Skull and Bones, where the guy is placed in a coffin, except in the armed services, you're not in a coffin. However, there's another person usually in there with you doing something to you. So maybe you get the gist of what I'm trying to say, and that this is everywhere, and that so that when she described the Riviera as being a safe house, and she described a specific event. Now, the Riviera was owned by Meshulam Riklis and the Riklis Family Corp, which, of course, my abuser is part of. And I had known about the Riviera being connected to Lansky, Meyer Lansky, and I had known about the Riviera being sort of a safe house for the gangsters. But I had not known until I heard it from Kay Griggs that it was also a safe house for the CIA, for Mossad, although it makes complete sense to me, and now I have a better understanding. She also said something else that makes a lot of sense. She said, so for example, let's talk about uh, uh, Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson was in the military. Um, Liberace was in the military. She mentioned a couple of other names. And I plan to do uh, a complete newsletter on some of the highlights that made sense to me. And so she said, well, they determined. So they basically told Rock Hudson, well, you're going to go and you're going to become an actor. And that's why he rose to such fame, because he had the intelligence industry behind him. And Liberace, the same thing. So that when I wrote about the breakdown of Kanye West, well, and Kanye West exposed the name of the person who he called his controller. And I put this on my Substack. It's real. I mean, we basically tend, on Twitter at least, to repeat and repeat and repeat, because not everybody reads your tweets. And some tweets, sometimes, you're shadow banned or whatever, but not everybody gets all the information. And so it gets tiring to tweet the same information over and over again, which I did for 3.5 years, to try to tell you guys that, yeah, it's all about mind control. If you have made it as a very noted writer, as a very noted screenplay person, she even outed Woodward and Bernstein as being operatives. Now, Woodward and Bernstein are better known as and I have to laugh because, it continues to a second generation. There is a story about the son of one of these guys, and I had sort of like an altercation with him on Twitter. But Carl Bernstein and Robert Woodward were, quote, investigative reporters, end quote, for the Washington Post. Kay Griggs exposed Michael Isikoff, Carl Bernstein, Robert Bob Woodward as operatives for the intelligence agencies. And she's right. She's right. She also talked about the ritual of the Navy SEALs. Now, if you remember, there was a photograph of, I believe it was Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday, that was attended by Harvey Weinstein, a serial rapist, in the motion picture industry. So you know that he's intelligence. I don't even have to tell you, although I've tried to tell you that he's intelligence. And we know who his attorney was, David Boies, who became the attorney for the approximately at least 60 victims of the Jeffrey Epstein child abuse. And not everybody was a minor, but of that trafficking ring that Ghislaine Maxwell was a part of. So yeah, so when you see somebody like Harvey Weinstein rise to prominence, such prominence that he was an untouchable for over 30 years, he's part of intelligence. Kay Griggs told you this in 1997. I don't know why it's still such a mystery. And I'm sorry, I am getting a little worked up, so I'm going to just calm down. Relax, relax, relax. So that she talked about the ritual that the Navy SEALs do upon graduation. So again, to get back to the photograph of Jeffrey Epstein dressed like a Navy SEALs officer, that was a private joke. Then you have Harvey Weinstein in the same photograph, dressed as in a tuxedo, so he represents the elite. And then Ghislaine Maxwell was supposed to, she was wearing some kind of bizarre outfit, was very unflattering, but she was supposed to represent a lady of the evening, if you will. What Kay revealed was that upon graduation, there's a ritual where they just are supposed to go out and cold murder anyone. Walk into a hospital, choose somebody, kill them. See a random person on the street, kill them. This is 1,000 people who graduate every year. And that shows you the contempt that intelligence has, intelligence run by the elite. And really, according to Kay Griggs, and I believe her, because a lot of this stuff kind of fits in very perfectly well with the information I've been able to obtain during the last 30 or so years that I've been trying to find answers for why somebody wants to kill me. So I believe her when she says that they do this. I believe her when she says that her husband was a secret assassin. I believe her when she talks about all of this stuff. Now, she was a Christian, or she's disappeared. She's disappeared. She was afraid that she was going to be murdered. Her husband's first wife was so battered by him that she too was murdered. However, the military, according to her, could not prosecute him for the murder of his first wife, because if you have a felony, you are no longer able to carry a gun. And they needed him to have a gun so that he can do his job. His job was to run around different countries and murder this person or murder that person or do this or do that. And so, yeah, I believe a lot of the stuff that she said. She also said that it's connected to the German Nazi criminals of, that committed the atrocities against the Jewish people and had these concentration camps. And I believe that because my information connects that too. And it's not just about Operation Paperclip. This goes way beyond Operation Paperclip to a point where, again, I would have to sit down and write it in order for you to grasp the enormity of that. And it makes sense because Ghislaine Maxwell, and I have this in my book, Ghislaine Maxwell, an Unauthorized Biography, which is probably why it has so many bad reviews by the opposition people. I quoted her as saying, somebody wanted to know how she keeps so rail thin, and her response was, I do it because I follow the Auschwitz diet. Now, Auschwitz was a horrific concentration camp where people were there to be killed, to put into these ovens to be killed. It's hard to talk about murdering people without getting emotional. But yes, there is an element of the Nazi German Nazism with the elite. So, for example, you have Henry Kissinger. He's not an American. If you truly do your due diligence and you start digging, you will see that Kissinger is connected to Nazi Germany. There are a couple of people that are in positions of power in the United States who have this connection, the same connection as Kissinger. How did that happen? In any event, in that photograph that Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell took at Princess Beatrice, that's another one. She's very friendly with a lot of the people that are like in the bad camp. And she's presented to the world as Prince Andrew's clueless daughter. I don't believe she's a clueless person. And I may get a lot of flack for this. But tell me who your friends are, and I will tell you who you are. That's pretty simple. All you have to do is follow who is connected to whom. Now, I do want to say that before I say anything else on Kay Griggs, and I may not say more than what I've said, is that I do want to read to you my my press release that was issued in 2015. It was issued, and there'll be a link below if you want to read it, on May 18th, 2015. So at that period of time, Jeffrey Epstein had not been arrested. He wasn't arrested until August 6th of 2019. I wrote the first draft of my book, which I gave to the Library of Congress in Washington in 1997. 1997. 1997. Long before I had a Twitter account, right? Talking about the same thing. So in any event, so this press release dated May 18th, 2015, it starts off with a sort of quote by me, and I'm going to read that to you. I have been attacked both online and off by Ira Rickless for as long as I can remember. The recent fraudulent claim against my website was part of a series of what appeared to be never-ending attacks against me and my business, whether they be online or off, said Sommers. On April 24th, 2015, Kirby Sommers received a DMCA notice from her ISP stating that materials on a website owned by her, thebillionaireswoman.com, and by the way, I've just recently removed that website thinking I didn't need it, were violating copyrights of The Secret Life of Billionaire Ira Rickless. I have been attacked, and then I'll just read it again. I have been attacked both online and off by Ira Rickless for as long as I can remember. The recent fraudulent claim against my website was part of a series of what appear to be never-ending attacks against me and my businesses, whether they be online or off. Seth Sommers, who is surprisingly candid about what she calls a 30-year stalking, harassment, and terrorizing battle at the hands of one of the wealthiest men in the world. The website Billionaire's Woman is where Sommers keeps information about her memoir regarding her forced affair with Rickless, which began in the mid-1980s. I called it a forced affair because the word sex slave, while I had used it, I didn't think anybody would understand what the word sex slave was. So I called it a forced affair. When you're forced into doing something, that's not something that you're doing voluntarily, by the way. So just if you need reinforcement as to what the word force means. With Rickless, which began in the mid-1980s, an earlier fictionalized account of what reads like Watergate meets sex lies and videotape was penned by Miss Sommers in 1996. I guess it was 1996, not 1997, under the title Naked with a Stranger. What was surprising but also an enormous relief was to read the article and technically Philly finally linking him to me. And so there's a link that I have in my press release that I'm discussing here, finally linking him to me. Everything I suspected turns out to be true, she added. On May 4th, 2015, Ira Rickless was named as an investor in Brand.com as the CEO of Lydia Security Monitoring, doing business as Cops Monitoring. The Technically Lily article, Brand.com, has filed for bankruptcy, written by Juliana Reyes about the Center City, Philadelphia tech company, which seemed to vanish into thin air earlier this year after a splashy domain purchase and a mayoral welcome in 2013, has received a lot of praise from the tech community. Brand.com, formerly known as Reputation Changer, was an online reputation management company who is reported to have made $11.8 million in revenue in 2013 and $8.5 million in 2014. So in any event, I'm just going to skip to the end. Stalking is the repeated unwanted intrusion into the life of another in a matter that causes anxiety, fear, and distress. 80% of the victims are women. Once you have been stalked, nothing is ever the same, Summers states. Add to this the fact that your abuser is a powerful man with powerful political friends, and as one attorney well-versed in this area recently told me, my situation is in the rarest of the 1 percentile. So I have done some recent research on stalking, and stalking is now considered, if somebody contacts you a second time after you tell this person, do not contact me, that is being stalked. That is the definition of being stalked. So stalking is a big deal. Apparently, I have been stalked online by paid trolls, by people like Whitney Webb. You don't really even know who Whitney Webb is. You just take her word that she is who she is. Her father is a very wealthy real estate person who lives in Miami, Florida. Miami is a hub of intelligence. Whitney Webb, according to some information that was put with photographs of her father and of who she's connected with, and the fact that she's being now bolstered by Joe Rogan, who is again, he a paid puppet. Joe Rogan is a paid puppet who is helping Whitney Webb. Now, I didn't understand why Whitney Webb, for example, was attacking me, and she was doing it through the father of her child. She has 2 children, both out of wedlock. I didn't understand in the beginning because I'm thinking as a single woman, and I'm working. I couldn't understand how she could pay her bills, take care of her baby, and then get pregnant again and not be married and not have the support of, let's say, then this guy, Johnny Vetmore, who I'd never heard of. Somebody later told me that he had written an article about one of the more mysterious women in Jeffrey Epstein's group. But one article, seriously, but he wrote several things that were supposed to make people feel that I was disingenuous. And I didn't understand. So I sent her an email saying, hey, I really don't get this. I thought maybe we're on the same side. Well, we're not, because they're not on the same side. They're not on the same side. Okay. So initially all they can find was that I was the president of the Tenants Association, which I was until I began doing this full time, and I solved problems for many of the buildings. My landlord has 1,000 buildings, And I was able to help many tenants with their issues. And I was able to improve things during the, I believe, 5 years that I spent doing that. And so they claimed that, and so in doing that, I had an account that I no longer have, and how these people have access to things that are no longer online was also mysterious to me. You know, is David Boies helping them? Possibly, because only somebody that has intelligence access would have access to something that I removed when I sat down at a meeting with the owner, who was connected to Lansky, who was connected to this group, who was connected to Roy Cohn, who was connected. They're all connected. If you're in real estate, in major real estate, like my landlord is, you are connected to this whole viper's nest. Because just like real estate is a place where people use to launder their money, and the same goes for sports. So let's say the Miami Heat, owned by the Arison family, which is connected again to the Rickless family, which is connected to the Mossad, which offered their help through their Carnival cruise line to Donald Trump during the pandemic. Come on. I can see this very clearly. But I can understand how a normal person who was living a normal life, who was never interfered with, and who never saw what was happening, because I would go to Washington, D.C., I would understand that the Pope was getting a ride on one of the 8 private planes that the Ricklisses pilfered from the companies that they pilfered from. The 1980s was nothing but a grab for all for the elite during the time that Ronald Reagan was in office in 1980, when he literally stole the election from Carter, literally stole it with the help of the Mossad. We have the October surprise. We have the Iran-Contra hostages that were like released a couple of hours after he was declared president. Come on. If you guys don't see things clearly at this point, and it's hard, again, for me to get into too much specific events, dates, who, what, name, but guess what, who was involved with that too? J. Stanley Pottinger. We have the same group of people, and then a second generation, because now we have Matt Pottinger, right, who got involved in the Trump situation. And because a lot of people who weren't even born then, so how would you know what happened, let's say during the Watergate period, or what happened when Ronald Reagan was elected? But during the whole Ronald Reagan era, which was supposed to be a time of prosperity. Well, it was a time for prosperity for the most powerful people on the planet, those who already were the elite, who were the wealthiest, because the rest of the country lost everything because these people went around buying up companies, stripping them of their assets. They were Michael Milken's monsters, right? They were buying up companies, tearing them apart, leaving stockholders with nothing. And so, of course, we were then going to, and then the housing crisis. It's just like, if you follow history and you connect it to who was president, who was maybe a close associate of that president. So you'll find people like Alfred Bloomingdale. You'll find people who are connected, and I'm not going to name that name right now, to Jeffrey Epstein. And in fact, Jeffrey Epstein has very deep connections to Richard Nixon. And I plan on including that in the upcoming Epstein Project newsletter. And I can't make that or emphasize that strongly enough, because there are connections to other trafficking rings and other things that happened long before Ghislaine Maxwell enters the picture. So to get back to Whitney Webb, I thought, maybe it's just because we're both women. I'm a woman who's exposing the underbelly of this beast, that's much bigger than anything any of us have ever imagined. Is it a rivalry based on the fact that we're both female? What is it? I thought we're both on the same side. Well, no, obviously we are not. And I will somehow, perhaps through my newsletter, send you a link to where you can hear and see for yourself who Whitney Webb really is. Because if she were actually on the side that you and I are on, assuming that what you're here for is to expose the serial rapist, uh, like so many have been exposed, like Harvey Weinstein, or to expose the pedophiles and the murderers of innocent people, well, then we're on the same side. However, if you're here to throw up an obstacle, now it seems like I might be the only real victim here, the only real victim of this cabal, because although I'm not a victim of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, I am a victim of the Rickless family, who is connected to that, and in fact is a level above, a level or two or three above Epstein and Maxwell. So is that why I've gotten so much pushback? Is that why my account disappeared? Is that why suddenly even the account that I tried to use that's connected to my business, my real estate business, which by the way, during the 20 years or so that I had that real estate business, all I received was interference as well. I received interference on Reddit. It made no sense to me. Slowly things made sense. In 2008, when the CIA actually reached out to me, then I started to piece things together. But for a long time, I was clueless. It was like I had a box full of pieces and I didn't know what connected to what. But now I have a box full of pieces that are connected, and I only have a couple of missing dots. I'm going to call them boulders, not dots, because every piece is a major piece of information. But I've been able to connect quite cohesively what I have been fighting. And what I have been fighting is immense. And Kay Griggs, regrettably, appears to be dead. The pastor that she confided in, Rick Strawcutter, is now running for U.S. Congress. It's the Congress people who are the first ones to be compromised. The first ones to be compromised. In fact, it was Congressman Gary Ackerman, who is connected to the Franklin scandal, who is a brother-in-law of Ira Rickless. I'm going to look. I'm going to say that there's going to be some information. I'm going to begin working on this, and I'm going to try to send as much as I can. On Tuesday, my newsletter drops for the Epstein Project podcast. I'm sorry, for my Epstein Project newsletter. If you haven't subscribed, listen, and by the way, I want to thank those of you who have stayed with me. This is my 4th year, and some of you have been with me year after year after year after year. And some of you have done it on a yearly basis, which is a cheaper way to subscribe, because then it reduces the monthly membership. And some of you have been with me every month. And I'm so appreciative of your support, because it has been you who have allowed me to continue to dig and put together these pieces so that I can share them with you. They can kick me off Twitter. That's fine. But my newsletter, you're going to continue to get it. because I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to continue to make sure that if you are part of my newsletters, of the group of people who have spent your hard-earned money to stay in touch with my information and my work, then I'm going to make sure that you continue to receive my information. My other one is on Substack, as I said. My YouTube videos are here. They're free. I do not plan to monetize them, although I can, but I choose not to, because even when I'm listening to a podcast and I see commercial after commercial after commercial, I'm really not inclined to listen to it again, because it's just too annoying. So I'm going to keep the YouTube videos free uh, as a service to you. My Twitter account was considered by many to be the best open source place for anyone who was studying the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell trafficking ring. And up until I said something to someone, I still had access to it. But you tell the wrong person, and at this point, I don't know who to trust. And that's what happens. It happened to Virginia Giuffre. She didn't know who to trust. It's now happening to me, and I thought I was over it. I thought that, oh, here are these great group of people who were following me on Twitter and who I can trust. Well, I'm sure that I can still trust some of you, but it's, I have to really proceed with caution, because and maybe it was done out of a sense of believing you were doing something good. But I had as I said, my business account on Twitter that I began to kind of like poke people and say, hey, here I'm here, and a couple of people said, no, that's a fake account, and they reported it. Well, guess what? That account is now gone. So I was going to do a podcast this morning to tell you, hey, you can find me here, but no, you can't find me there anymore. You can't find me there anymore. Listen, you can't be as attacked as I am if you're not legit. So for Whitney Webb, I do not wish her well. I hope that you guys can open your eyes and see that she is part of the other side. For Johnny Vetmore, who I don't know who the hell he is, but he has created a whole slew of fake accounts to say bad things about me. Go F yourself. If I can do the middle finger, if I was allowing myself to be filmed live and I don't do it for my safety, you would see my middle finger. And I don't do that. I'm not crass. And I don't want to stoop to a level that I don't belong on. I have managed to survive in a dignified manner for decades. For decades. I write books, I write newsletters, I try to give people good advice. I don't harm anyone. I try to like spread awareness. And oh my goodness, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. And so for those of you who do follow the Thanksgiving tradition in the United States, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. For those of you who are going to be working like myself, have a nice, productive day. I guess I will meet you here. If you want to leave a comment, I welcome it. I had so many comments the other day. I think it was approximately 100 comments or so, that I will be straight with you. I might be able to respond to a couple of comments, but I don't think I will be able to have the time to respond to everyone's comment, but know that I read them all. So if you have something interesting to say, certainly do leave it. I will also say that as much as I blocked on my Twitter account, I also block on my YouTube account. My blocking bad actors and people who are here to hurt me in one way or another, I block those people too. My blocking is not over, but my intent to continue to spread awareness is alive and well. And with that, I will say like the video, subscribe. Happy Thanksgiving to all, and many thanks to each and every one of you. Alrighty, bye.